I fell for a man who orchestrated my entire world before I even knew his name. His hands are stained with blood I'll never see, his empire built on fear I'll never fully understand, and the foundation of everything we are is a lie I chose to forgive. My name is Dr. Marin Cole, and this is how obsession begins. Not with love, not with fate, but with a photograph, a bruise, and a man who decided I belonged to him long before I ever agreed. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to realize they'd been watching you from the beginning? That every coincidence was calculation, every rescue was choreographed, every moment of connection was designed? I'm standing in Alexei Sokolov's penthouse right now, holding a folder that just shattered everything I thought I knew. My hands are shaking. The Chicago skyline glitters beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows like a constellation of lies. And the man I've spent 6 months falling for is watching me with those dark, unreadable eyes that suddenly make perfect, devastating sense. Inside this folder are surveillance photographs. Dozens of them. Me leaving the clinic at midnight. Me grabbing coffee at the corner shop on Roosevelt. Me treating patients in free clinics on the South Side. Neighborhoods where gunshots are background noise and survival is a daily negotiation.
Every photo is dated. Time-stamped. Professional quality.
3 years of my life, documented like evidence. And at the bottom of the stack, there's a hospital record. A police report. Court testimony transcripts with my signature at the bottom. The name on every page is Anton Kuznetsov. And the photograph paperclip to the front shows a young woman's face destroyed. Cigarette burns across her collarbone, jaw broken in 2 places, eyes swollen shut. I remember her. God, I remember her. She'd stumbled into County General on a Friday night, so beaten she could barely stand. 23 years old. Terrified. Her boyfriend was Anton Kuznetsov, mid-level enforcer for the Russian mob, and I spent 4 hours documenting every injury, taking photographs that would later be used to put him away for aggravated assault and attempted murder. He got 7 years. I testify. I looked him in the eye and told the jury exactly what he'd done. The judge called me courageous. The prosecutor said I'd saved that girl's life. Anton Kuznetsov went to Stateville Correctional Center, and I went back to work, proud of myself for making a difference in a world that rarely rewards doing the right thing. That was 3 years ago. The same year Alexei Sokolov's surveillance of me began. I look up from the folder. Alexei is standing near the window, suit jacket discarded, white shirt rolled to his elbows, completely still. He's not denying it. He's not explaining. He's just watching me process the truth with the same intensity he's watched me do everything else, like my pain is something he wants to memorize. You knew who I was, I say, and my voice sounds strange, distant. Before Marcus Harrington ever walked into my clinic, before Elise sat in that exam chair, before everything. Yes. His answer is simple. Unashamed. I feel like I'm falling and standing perfectly still at the same time. Anton Kuznetsov is your brother. Was. Alexei's jaw tightened slightly. He died in prison, rival gang, 18 months into his sentence. The folder slips from my hands, photographs scattering across imported marble. You've been watching me for 3 years. Yes. Why? The question tears out of me. Why would you revenge? He says it like he's ordering coffee. Calm. Matter of fact. You destroyed my brother's life, sent him to a place where he couldn't survive. I wanted you to understand what that felt like. The room tilts. I grab the back of the nearest chair to steady myself. So you... what? Planted Elise Harrington in my path. Knew her husband would follow? Orchestrated the entire thing so you could swoop in and play savior? Yes, everything was calculated. At first. He moves toward me, and I back up instinctively. He stops, something flickering across his face that might be pain. I spent 2 years studying you.
Dr. Cole, learning your patterns, routine, the clinics you volunteered at, the causes you supported. I knew which coffee shop you preferred.
Your break's at 9:30 because that's when the waiting room cleared out. I knew you'd been raised by a single mother who died of cancer when you were in medical school. That you had student debt that would take 30 years to pay off. That you worked 80-hour weeks because you genuinely believed medicine was a calling, not a career. His voice is soft, almost reverent, and it makes everything worse. I knew everything about you except how it would feel to actually meet you. Stop. I can't. He takes another step. I planned it perfectly. Elise was easy to find, a woman trapped in an abusive marriage, desperate for an exit. I approached her 6 months before she walked into your clinic, offered her protection, a way out, in exchange for one thing.
She had to go to you specifically. She had to make sure her husband followed, because I knew.
Maran, I knew you'd document the injuries. I knew you'd refuse to back down. I knew Marcus Harrington would come for you, and I knew I'd be there to stop him. I'm shaking my head, backing toward the door. You used her. You used me. I saved her, and you. For revenge, initially. His eyes are burning now, desperate. I was going to make you dependent on me, make you need me, then destroy everything. The way you destroyed Anton. Let you feel what it's like to lose the person you built your life around. So why didn't you? I demand. Why am I still here? Why did you help Elise? Why did you destroy Marcus? Why? Because I watched you stand between Marcus Harrington and his wife, and you didn't flinch, Alexei says, voice cracking slightly. This man who could ruin your career, who could hurt you, who had every advantage.
And you took his picture anyway. You documented the evidence.
You refused to bend. And I realized in that moment that I didn't want to destroy you. I wanted to keep you. The words hit like a physical blow.
You're insane. Probably.
He's close enough now that I can see the pulse in his throat, feel the heat radiating off him.
But I watched you for 5 more months after that. Watched you treat Elise. Watched you refuse every gift I tried to send in on.
Watched you work yourself to exhaustion because you cared more about saving strangers than protecting yourself. And somewhere in those 5 months, revenge stopped mattering. You became the only thing that mattered. If you're just finding this channel, you're about to witness how obsession begins.
Subscribe, because this story doesn't end here. It only gets darker from here.
I should leave, I whisper. But you won't, Alexei says quietly. And the worst part, the absolutely devastating part, is that he's right. Because 6 months ago, I had no idea the man who would consume my life was already circling. 6 months ago, everything was normal. 6 months ago, I was Dr. Marin Cole, emergency physician, volunteer at 3 different free clinics. The woman who couldn't walk past suffering without trying to fix it. And that's exactly why he chose me. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late June when Elise Harrington first walked into my clinic. The air conditioning was struggling against Chicago's humid summer heat. And I was running 2 hours behind schedule because we'd had 3 walk-ins with heat exhaustion and 1 with a broken arm from a construction accident. I was exhausted, starving, and seriously reconsidering my life choices when my nurse, Rita, knocked on the door. "You've got one more," she said, sounding apologetic. "She doesn't have an appointment, but she looks bad." I nodded, downing the last of my cold coffee. "Send her in." The woman who entered was mid-20s, wearing a designer coat that cost more than my monthly rent despite the 90-degree weather. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, but her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold her purse. I recognized the signs immediately. The expensive clothes, his arm, the makeup covering something. The way she held herself like she was constantly bracing for impact. "Hi," I said gently, gesturing to the exam table. "I'm Dr. Cole. What brings you in today?" "I just need something for the pain," she said, eyes fixed on the floor. "I fell down the stairs." I'd heard that exact phrase probably 50 times in my career. It was never the stairs. "Okay, let me take a look." I moved slowly, telegraphing every movement.
Can you tell me your name?
A pause.
Elise Harrington.
I managed to keep my expression neutral, but internally I was reeling.
Harrington.
As in Harrington Development Corp., the real estate empire that owned half of downtown Chicago. The company whose billboards promised luxury living and whose CEO was regularly featured in business magazines. Marcus Harrington was Chicago royalty, rich, powerful, untouchable. and his wife was sitting in my clinic with her hands shaking and a lie about stairs on her lips.
Elise, I'm going to need you to remove your coat so I can examine you properly.
She hesitated, fingers tightening on the fabric.
It's nothing serious. I just need pain medication. I understand, but I can't prescribe anything without an exam.
Slowly, reluctantly, she slipped off the coat. The bruises were immediate and unmistakable. Fresh purple marks on her upper arms, finger-shaped shadows where someone had grabbed her hard enough to leave an imprint. Older yellow-green bruises fading on her wrists. A split lip poorly concealed beneath nude lipstick. And when I gently examined her ribs, she flinched. "Elise," I said carefully, "these injuries aren't consistent with a fall. Someone hurt you."
Her eyes filled with tears.
"Please don't. Please. I just need something for the pain and I'll go. I need to document this, for the medical record. No."
Panic flooded her face.
"You can't take pictures. He checks everything. My phone, my emails, my bank statements. He tracks my location. If he finds out I came here. The medical record is confidential. He won't. You don't understand," she interrupted, voice cracking. "He owns things, people, systems. He'll find out. He always finds out." I looked at this terrified woman and felt the same anger that had driven me into medicine in the first place. The same rage that made me volunteer at clinics in neighborhoods other doctors wouldn't enter. The same fury that made me testify against Anton Kuznetsov even when the Russian mob sent anonymous threats to my apartment.
I'd taken an oath, and some oaths matter more than fear. "I'm going to document your injuries," I said firmly. "It's protocol, and someday, when you're ready to leave him, this evidence might save your life. There's no leaving him." Elise was crying now. "There's no..." I raised my camera. The flash went off twice before she could protest. Her face went white. "What did you just do?" "My job." I lowered the camera. "Elise, there are resources I can." Her phone buzzed. She looked down at the screen and the blood drained completely from her face. "He's here." The words were barely a whisper. "He's in the building." I felt my stomach drop. "Your husband? He tracks my phone. Oh God. Oh God." The exam room door slammed open with enough force to crack the door frame. Marcus Harrington filled the doorway like a storm given human form. He was exactly as polished as his magazine photos, tailored suit, expensive watch, face built for boardrooms and country clubs. But in person there was something else. Something the cameras never captured. Violence. Pure, barely restrained violence simmering beneath the civilized surface. "Elise," he said, voice deadly calm. "Get up." His wife flinched like she'd been struck. I moved between them instinctively, heart hammering. "Mr. Harrington, this is a private medical consultation. You need to. I don't care." He crossed the room in 3 strides, reaching for Elise's arm. "She's leaving, now." I was trying to sound authoritative, but my voice came out shakier than I wanted. His gaze cut to me, cold and venomous. "You're the doctor who thought it was smart to take pictures of my wife?" Ice flooded my veins. "How did he know?" "Medical documentation is required by law for potential abuse cases. Delete them." "No." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist hard enough to make me gasp. "Delete them or I will destroy you. I'll bury you in lawsuits. I'll make sure you never practice medicine again." The overhead fluorescent lights flickered. 1, twice. Then the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. A voice, low and cold and utterly bored, cut through the tension like a scalpel. "You'll do nothing." I couldn't breathe. A man stepped into the exam room doorway, hands in his pockets, posture completely relaxed. He was tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. His face was all sharp angles and aristocratic features, the kind of face that belonged in European oil paintings. But his eyes, God, his eyes were the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Empty. Predatory. "I'll see."
I'd seen him exactly once before, months ago, when I'd signed the lease for my clinic space. The building owner. I hadn't caught his name then. I still didn't know it now. But Marcus Harrington knew him. The color drained from Marcus's face like someone had opened a valve. His grip on my wrist went instantly slack. "Mr. Sokolov," he said, and all the venom had evaporated from his voice, replaced by something that sounded horribly like fear. "I didn't realize this was one of your properties. This is a private family matter. I was just private." The man, Sokolov, tilted his head slightly, studying Marcus the way an entomologist might examine an insect. "You broke into one of my buildings, assaulted one of my tenants, threatened a woman under medical care. Which part of that strikes you as private? I was simply collecting my wife. I have every right to. You have no rights here." Sokolov's voice didn't rise.
It didn't need to.
The threat was woven into every syllable. "Leave." Marcus hesitated. I watched his jaw work, pride warring with self-preservation. The silence stretched, suffocating and terrible. Finally, Marcus released Elise completely and stepped back. "This isn't over," he muttered. Sokolov smiled. It was possibly the most frightening thing I'd ever seen. "Yes," he said softly.
It is.
Marcus left. The door clicked shut behind him and the pressure in the room didn't ease. If anything, it intensified. Elise collapsed into the nearest chair, sobbing into her hands. I stood frozen, wrist throbbing where Marcus had grabbed me, trying to process what had just happened. Sokolov's gaze shifted to me. "Are you injured?"
No.
The word came out shakier than I wanted. "I'm fine, thank you." He didn't acknowledge the gratitude. His attention moved to Elise. "You're not going back to him." Elise looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I don't have anywhere else to go. He controls everything. My bank accounts, my family's business loans. You'll stay at one of my properties," Sokolov interrupted. "Secure, private, he won't find you. I can't afford, I'm not asking you to pay." The certainty in his voice left no room for argument. I found myself speaking without thinking. "Why would you help her?" Sokolov's eyes met mine. Something in that gaze made my pulse stutter for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "Because men like Marcus Harrington are bad for business," he said quietly. "And because you asked, you took the photos." He turned and walked out, leaving those words hanging in the air like a promise. Or a threat. I couldn't tell which.
What time is it where you're watching from?
Because this is the hour when everything changes. That night, I returned to my apartment and found an envelope slipped under my door.
No postage.
No return address. Just my name written in sharp, precise handwriting. Inside was a single photograph, the one I'd taken of Elise's bruises. And beneath it, a note on expensive cardstock. "Evidence is a dangerous thing, Dr. Cole.
Keep it safe." No signature.
But I knew who sent it.
I should have been terrified.
Should have gone to the police, filed a report, demanded to know how he'd gotten into my apartment building. Instead, I stood there holding that photograph and felt something else entirely.
Seen.
Protected.
Claimed.
And I didn't know what scared me more, that a stranger had copies of my medical documentation, or that some dark part of me was glad he did. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus Harrington's world collapsed.
It started small. An IRS audit.
A frozen offshore account. Whispers at the country club about bad investments and overextended credit lines. Then it escalated. His company's financial records leaked to the Tribune, exposing shell corporations and suspicious transfers. His business partners issued public statements distancing themselves. His board of directors voted to remove him as CEO. Criminal investigations opened into money laundering and tax evasion.
Real estate holdings seized. Assets frozen.
His carefully constructed empire crumbled like a sandcastle in a hurricane. And I watched it happen from a distance, treating Elise twice a week at the secure penthouse Sokolov had provided. The building was in River North, all glass and steel and money. The security team knew my face, waved me through without question. The apartment itself was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River, furniture that looked like it belonged in an art museum, a level of luxury I'd only seen in magazines.
And Elise was healing.
Slowly. The bruises faded. The fear in her eyes dimmed. She smiled occasionally, tentative and fragile, but real. "He's protecting you," she said one evening, eyes knowing. We were sitting on her balcony, watching the city lights flicker to life as the sun set. I frowned.
Whoo!
She smiled faintly. "You realize that, don't you? I'm his tenant. He intervened in a domestic dispute, that's all. He owns 63 buildings in Chicago," Elise said. "You think he personally handles tenant disputes for all of them?" I didn't answer. "He's destroyed Marcus," Elise continued. "Completely, systematically, the IRS audit, the leaked financials, the criminal investigations. That's not coincidence. That's orchestration. That's someone with serious power and serious connections deciding to erase a person from existence."
Marcus did that to himself. Maybe.
Elise took a sip of wine. "But the timing is interesting, don't you think? It all started the day after you took those photos. The day Sokolov walked into your clinic and saw Marcus grab your wrist. My pulse quickened." "That doesn't mean he doesn't do things like this," Elise interrupted gently. "Not for strangers, not for anyone really. He's known for being cold, calculating. He makes money, lots of it, and he stays out of people's personal business. But you," she trailed off, studying me. "You're different. I barely know him. Do you want to?" The question hung in the air between us. I should have said no. Should have laughed it off, changed the subject, maintained professional boundaries. But late that night, lying in bed, I found myself thinking about dark eyes and dangerous smiles, and the way Sokolov had looked at me like he was solving an equation only he could see. And when I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of hands stained with blood I'd never see, protecting me from threats I'd never face. 2 months later, Marcus Harrington was a ghost. Divorced.
Bankrupt.
Under federal investigation. His name was a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms, a reminder that even the powerful could fall.
And Elise was free, truly free.
She hosted a small dinner to celebrate, just the two of us, wine and relief and quiet gratitude.
"I'm leaving Chicago," she said.
Starting over in Portland. My cousin has a gallery there. She's offered me a job.
"That's wonderful," I said sincerely.
"You deserve a fresh start."
Elise smiled, but there was something sad in it. "He's going to come for you next." My stomach dropped.
"Marcus."
She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Sokolov, he wants you, Marin. I've seen the way men like him operate. Once they decide they want something, someone, they don't stop. They circle. They wait. They arrange circumstances until refusing becomes harder than surrendering."
"That's ridiculous." My phone buzzed.
Unknown number.
A single text message. Saturday.
8 p.m.
The address is attached.
"Don't make me come find you." I stared at the screen, pulse racing. Elise leaned over, read the message, and laughed softly. "Too late. You feel it too, don't you? That pull toward danger."
Hit like if you know exactly what I mean.
I told myself I wouldn't go. Told myself I'd delete the message, block the number, maintain appropriate boundaries between tenant and landlord. But Saturday arrived, and at 7:30 I found myself standing in front of my closet, trying on the third dress, wondering why my hands were shaking. The address he'd sent was an exclusive restaurant in the Gold Coast, the kind of place that didn't have a sign or a public phone number. I gave my name at an unmarked door and was led through a private entrance to a secluded corner where Alexei Sokolov sat alone, 2 glasses of wine already poured. He stood when I approached, gestured to the seat across from him. "Dr. Cole, Mr. Sokolov, Alexei."
I sat slowly, heart hammering.
The restaurant was intimate, dimly lit, the kind of place where conversations were whispered and secrets were currency. He'd chosen a table where we couldn't be overheard, couldn't be seen from the main dining room. Everything about this felt calculated.
"Why am I here?"
I asked. "Because you intrigue me. I'm not interested in being a curiosity." His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "Good. I don't collect curiosities. I collect things that matter." "I'm not a thing." "No," he agreed, his gaze holding mine with unsettling intensity. "You're not." A waiter appeared with appetizers neither of us had ordered. I realized with a sinking feeling that this entire evening had been orchestrated long before I walked through the door. "You destroyed Marcus Harrington," I said quietly. "He destroyed himself." Alexei took a sip of wine. "I simply accelerated the process." "Why?" "You already know why." "I don't." "Yes, you do." He set down his glass. "You stood in front of a violent man and refused to bend. You protected someone weaker. You risked everything for a stranger." His voice dropped. "That kind of courage is rare, Dr. Cole, and rare things are worth protecting." My throat tightened. "I don't need protection. Everyone needs protection." His eyes darkened. "Especially from people like me. I should have left them. Should have stood up, walked out, gone back to my safe, predictable life where morality was clear and monsters stayed in their designated corners. But I didn't. I stayed. And over the next 3 hours, I learned that Alexei Sokolov was unlike anyone I'd ever met. He was well-read, frighteningly intelligent, capable of discussing Dostoevsky and derivatives trading with equal fluency. He asked questions that cut straight to the core of things, didn't bother with small talk or social niceties. He listened like my words were equations he was solving, pieces of a puzzle only he could see. And beneath the polish, beneath the wealth, there was something else. Loneliness. A hunger that had nothing to do with food or sex or power, and everything to do with being seen by someone who wasn't afraid. "Why did you become a doctor?" he asked. "My mother." The answer came out before I could stop it. "She died of cancer when I was in medical school. We couldn't afford the treatment she needed. So I decided I'd never let money be the reason someone suffered." Something flickered across his face. "And yet you work yourself to exhaustion for patients who can't pay you. That's the point. Martyrdom doesn't pay student loans. I'm not a martyr. I'm just someone who believes healing is a calling, not a career," he finished. "Someone who walks into danger because you can't stand by and watch people hurt. Someone who took a photograph that could have gotten you killed because doing the right thing mattered more than staying safe." He leaned forward slightly. "You're rare, Marin, and rare things are either protected or destroyed. I prefer the former." The use of my first name sent a shiver down my spine. "You don't know me. I know enough." And the terrifying thing was, I believed him. I fell slowly. Or maybe I fell all at once, and simply refused to admit it until denial became impossible. Over the next 6 months, Alexei Sokolov became the center of my world in ways I still don't fully understand. It started with dinners. Twice a week, then 3 times, then almost every night. Exclusive restaurants where we'd talk for hours about philosophy, medicine, the nature of power, the weight of choices. He'd ask about my day, and I'd find myself telling him things I'd never told anyone. About the patient I couldn't save. About the medical board complaint filed by a family member who blamed me for their loved one's death. About the crushing weight of student debt and the fear that I'd spend my entire life paying for the privilege of trying to help people. He listened like my words were sacred texts. Remembered details I'd mentioned in passing. Sent donations to my clinic in amounts that made me uncomfortable, always anonymously, but I knew. I always knew. And slowly, so slowly I didn't notice until it was too late, he began weaving himself into the fabric of my life. He knew my schedule without asking. Would appear at my apartment building after particularly brutal shifts with food from my favorite Thai restaurant, the one I'd mentioned exactly once 3 weeks earlier. He'd send cars when I was working late in dangerous neighborhoods, always with a note. "I'd prefer you arrived home safely." His control manifested in 1,000 small ways. The colleague who'd asked me out suddenly transferred to a hospital in Boston. The landlord who'd been threatening eviction abruptly became accommodating. The student loan servicer that had been hounding me went silent after I mentioned it during dinner. I should have been horrified. Should have recognized the signs of obsessive behavior, of someone systematically removing obstacles and potential threats from my life. But I wasn't, because for the first time since my mother died, I felt protected.
Valued.
seen in a way that had nothing to do with what I could provide and everything to do with who I was. And God help me, I craved it. The first time he kissed me, we were in his penthouse, the same one where I'd later find the folder that would shatter everything. It was 3 months into whatever this was. We'd been arguing about ethics, about whether morality was absolute or circumstantial. You believe in right and wrong, he'd said. Black and white, no gray. I believe some things are non-negotiable, I'd countered. Like not hurting people. What if hurting one person saves 10? Then you find another way. What if there is no other way? I'd stood up, frustrated. Then you accept that some problems don't have clean solutions, but you don't compromise your principles just because it's convenient. He'd risen too, closing the distance between us. And what if your principles conflict with keeping someone safe? What if protecting the person you care about requires doing something you'd normally find morally reprehensible? But I never finished the sentence. Because he'd cupped my face in his hands and kissed me like I was air, and he'd been drowning. And I'd kissed him back like I'd been waiting my entire life for permission to fall. What followed was 6 months of the most intense, consuming relationship I'd ever experienced. We fought constantly, about everything. I pushed back against his control, his need to orchestrate every aspect of my life. He pushed back against my self-sacrificing tendencies, my inability to prioritize my own well-being. But we also understood each other in ways that felt almost supernatural. He saw my exhaustion before I acknowledged it. I saw his loneliness before he admitted it. We were two people who'd spent our lives isolated by our differences, and somehow, impossibly, we fit. The sex was complicated. Not soft or simple or remotely safe. It was power exchange and trust, and the kind of vulnerability that felt like standing naked in a storm. He was controlling in bed the way he was controlling in life, absolutely, completely, with a precision that was both terrifying and intoxicating. And I fought him every step of the way, because surrendering to Alexei Sokolov wasn't a casual decision. It was a fundamental rewriting of who I was. But slowly, inevitably, I surrendered anyway. Because being with him felt like finally being understood. Like finding someone who saw all my jagged edges and sharp corners and didn't want to smooth them into something more palatable. He wanted me exactly as I was, stubborn, idealistic, occasionally self-righteous, willing to fight for strangers with more energy than I fought for myself. You're changing me, I told him one night. We were lying in his bed, Chicago spread out below us like a galaxy. Good, he'd said. You needed changing. That's exactly the kind of thing that should terrify me. But it doesn't. His hand had traced patterns on my bare shoulder. Because you know I'm right. You give everything to everyone else and nothing to yourself. You need someone who'll take care of you, even when you're too stubborn to accept it. That's not taking care of me. That's controlling me. What's the difference? I'd turned to look at him. Intent. Control is about power over someone. Care is about protecting them. And if I do both?
His eyes had been completely serious.
If I need to control you because the thought of something happening to you makes me want to burn the world down?
I should have been afraid.
Should have recognized that level of possessiveness as a warning sign. But instead I'd kissed him and whispered, "Then I guess we're both in trouble." The cracks started appearing around month 5.
Small things, easy to dismiss.
Documents in his study I wasn't allowed to see. Phone calls he'd take in another room, voice colder than I'd ever heard it, speaking Russian in tones that made my skin prickle. The way his security team looked at me sometimes, with expressions that suggested they knew something I didn't. And Elisa's final message before she left Chicago, sent at 2 in the morning like she'd been debating whether to send it at all. Ask him about Anton. I'd stared at that message for 20 minutes. Typed responses. Deleted them. Finally sent back, "Who's Anton?" She never answered, and I told myself it didn't matter. That everyone had history, secrets, parts of themselves they kept locked away. That I didn't need to know every detail of Alexei's past to love him in the present. But late at night, when he thought I was asleep, I'd watch him stand by the window, staring out at the city with an expression I couldn't read.
And I'd wonder what shadows he was seeing, what ghosts he was carrying, what I still didn't know about the man I'd given myself to. I was so focused on what I was becoming that I never questioned what he'd already been. Never asked why he knew so much about my life before we met. Never wondered why his intervention with Marcus had been so perfectly timed, so devastatingly effective. Never questioned why a man who supposedly avoided personal entanglements had dismantled another man's entire existence for touching my wrist. I fell in love with Alexei Sokolov, believing he was my savior. And I never once asked what I might need saving from, until the night I found the folder. Comment below, have you ever wanted someone you knew you shouldn't? Because that's where this story lives. It was a Thursday evening, 6 months into our relationship. Alexei was in New York for business, wasn't due back until morning. I'd come to his penthouse to feed his cat, a massive gray thing named Dostoevsky that tolerated my existence with aristocratic disdain. I wasn't supposed to go into his study. He'd never explicitly forbidden it, but there were unspoken boundaries in our relationship, rooms and spaces that were his alone. But Dostoevsky had knocked over a plant in the hallway, and I'd needed paper towels, and the study was closest. The folder was sitting on his desk. Not hid, not locked away. Just sitting there, my name printed on the tab in block letters. I should have walked away. Should have respected his privacy, cleaned up the plant, left the study, and never thought about it again. But my name was on that folder. And some part of me, the part that had testified against abusers and documented injuries despite threats, the part that couldn't walk past suffering without trying to fix it, that part needed to know. So I opened it, and my world shattered. Now we're back to where I started, standing in Alexei's penthouse, holding evidence of 3 years of surveillance, looking at the man I love and realizing he'd been hunting me long before I ever knew his name. Anton Kuznetsov was your brother, I say, and my voice is steadier than I feel. You watched me for 3 years, planted a lease in my path, orchestrated everything so I'd be vulnerable, so I'd need you, so you could destroy me the way I destroyed him. Yes. Alexei's face is carefully blank. That was the plan, so why didn't you? The question tears out of me. Why am I still here? Why did you help Elise? Why did you destroy Marcus? Why did you? I gesture helplessly at the space between us, at the 6 months of intimacy and connection and everything I thought was real. Why did you do any of this? Because I watched you stand up to Marcus Harrington, he says quietly. And I realized you'd do it again. You'd stand up to me, you'd fight me the same way you fought him, and I needed to know if you were real. Real? If you'd actually choose right over easy, if you'd refuse to bend even when bending was smarter, if you were genuinely the person I'd been watching or just someone performing good intentions for an audience. He takes a step toward me. So I tested you. You tested me, I repeat, and I can't tell if I want to scream or laugh or both. You manipulated my entire life as a test. Yes, that's insane. Probably. He's close enough now that I can feel the heat radiating off him. But I watched you treat Elise with the same care you'd treat anyone. I watched you refuse every gift I tried to send. I watched you work yourself to exhaustion because you genuinely believed medicine was a calling. And somewhere in those months, revenge stopped mattering. His hand lifts, hovering near my face but not touching, like he's asking permission. You became the only thing that mattered. Your brother went to prison because of me. My brother went to prison because he was a monster who nearly killed a woman. Alexei's voice hardened. And you were brave enough to stop him. He died there. He made enemies there. That's not your fault. You should hate me. I tried. His hand finally touches my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. For approximately 5 minutes I hated you with everything I had, and then I watched you laugh at something a patient said, this exhausted, genuine laugh, and I realized I wanted to hear that laugh every day for the rest of my life. Tears are streaming down my face now. Everything was a lie. Not everything. His other hand comes up, cradling my face. The first night was calculated. The intervention with Marcus was orchestrated, but every conversation after that was real. Every dinner, every argument, every moment I touched you. That was real. The plan was to make you need me.
The reality is that I belong to you from the moment you refuse to delete those photos. I should leave, I whisper. But you won't. And God help me, he's right. Because I'm furious and devastated and my entire foundation is crumbling. But I'm also standing here letting him hold my face while I cry. And I haven't pulled away. I need time, I say.
Take it. I need space to think.
I need you to tell me everything. No more lies, no more manipulation. If this is going to be anything, I need complete honesty. Anything you want to know, I'll answer. His eyes are desperate now, vulnerable in a way I've never seen. But Marin, you need to understand. I've spent my life in darkness. I've done things that would horrify you. I've hurt people, destroyed lives, built an empire on fear and violence. I'm not a good man. I will never be a good man. His voice cracks. But I am entirely, completely yours, and I will spend every remaining day proving that to you, if you let me. I should walk away. Every instinct I have, every moral principle I've built my life around is screaming at me to leave.
But I kiss him instead. Hard, angry,
desperate, like I'm trying to hurt him or save him or both. And he kisses me back like I'm the only thing keeping him tethered to humanity, like without me he'd disappear into the darkness he spent his life inhabiting. When we break apart, my hands are fisted in his shirt, my breath coming in gasps.
I hate you, I say.
I know. I should never forgive you. I know. This is the worst decision I've ever made. Probably. And that he's lifting me, carrying me to the bedroom. And I'm letting him because I've spent 6 months falling in love with a man who orchestrated my world. And I can either accept that my judgment is fatally flawed, or admit that maybe, possibly, the foundation being a lie doesn't make the building any less real. We fall into bed and into each other, and into a new understanding of what we are.
Not simple.
Not clean. Not even entirely healthy. But real in a way that has nothing to do with how it started, and everything to do with what we've chosen to build. Are you listening alone right now?
Because you need to hear this next part.
I spent 3 days at my own apartment, trying to process what I'd learned.
Rita at the clinic noticed I was distracted. Patients asked if I was feeling well.
I went through the motions of my life like a ghost, treating injuries and prescribing medications and documenting everything with mechanical precision while my mind spiraled. The worst part wasn't that he'd lied. It was that I understood why. Because I'd spent 3 years watching Anton Kuznetsov's victim heal, watching her rebuild her life, knowing I'd played a role in giving her that chance.
I'd felt good about that. Proud. Like I'd made a real difference.
And Alexei had watched his brother go to prison and then die there, and he'd blamed me. Maybe I would have done the same. Maybe anyone would have. On the 4th day, I returned to the penthouse. Alexei was standing by the window, same position I'd seen him in countless times. He turned when I entered, and the hope and fear warring in his expression nearly broke me. "Tell me about Anton," I said. So he did. He told me about growing up in Moscow, about a father who ran a criminal organization and a mother who died young. About how Anton was violent from childhood, how their father encouraged it, weaponized it. How Alexei had been groomed for leadership while Anton had been shaped into an enforcer. "I protected him for years," Alexei said quietly. "Made excuses, cleaned up his messes, told myself he'd change. And then you testified, and he went to prison, and part of me was relieved. Because finally, someone had been brave enough to stop him when I couldn't." "Then why blame me?" "Because relieved wasn't all I felt. I also felt guilty. Like I'd failed him. Like if I'd been a better brother, he wouldn't have become what he was." He turned to face me fully. "So I decided you'd taken something from me, and I'd take something from you. Your safety, your autonomy, your ability to exist in the world without looking over your shoulder. When did that change?" "Immediately." He laughed, bitter and self-deprecating. "I spent 2 years planning revenge, building this elaborate scenario, learning everything about you. And then I walked into your clinic and watched you refuse to back down to Marcus Harrington, and in that moment, every bit of planning became irrelevant. Because I realized I didn't want to destroy you, I wanted to know you. But you still manipulated me. Still orchestrated everything. Yes.
No excuses. No justifications.
Just acknowledgement.
And I'd do it again because if I'd approached you honestly, told you who I was and what I'd...
You would have run. And I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let you disappear before I understood why you made me feel human for the first time in 20 years.
I sat down on the couch, exhausted.
This is so messed up. Yes, a healthy person would leave. Probably. So what does it say about me that I'm still here? Alexei crossed the room, kneeling in front of me so we were eye level. It says you understand that people are complicated. That good people can do terrible things, and terrible people can choose differently. It says you see me clearly. All of me, and you're deciding whether the man I am now is worth the sins I committed to become him.
His hand found mine, and I'm terrified of what you'll decide.
I looked at our joined hands. Thought about the patient I'd seen that morning, a teenager with cigarette burns from her stepfather. About the documentation I'd done. The photos I'd taken. The resources I'd provided. About how I'd driven home thinking that maybe, just maybe, she'd use that evidence to escape. And I thought about how Marcus Harrington's abuse had only stopped because Alexei had intervened. How Elise was free because he'd dismantled her abuser's power. How the violence he was capable of had been aimed at men who hurt women, and maybe that didn't make it right, but it made it complicated. I need you to promise me something, I said. Anything. No more lies, no more manipulation. If we're doing this, it's as equals. You don't get to orchestrate my life or remove obstacles without my knowledge. You don't get to make decisions for me because you think you know better. Agreed. And if you revert to controlling behavior, if you cross lines I've set, I walk away, permanently. Understood. I'm serious, Alexei. One violation and I'm gone. I believe you. He brought my hand to his lips.
And that's exactly why I'll never risk it.
I pulled him up onto the couch, into my arms, and felt something in my chest unlock.
Not forgiveness, not yet, but acceptance.
Understanding. The knowledge that love is rarely clean and sometimes the strongest bonds are forged in impossible circumstances. Do you love me because I'm good? I asked quietly, or because I stopped your brother? I love you because you're the only person who ever made me want to be different while knowing I never will be. His lips brushed my temple. I love you because you see exactly what I am and you're still here. Because you fight me when I need fighting and you hold me when I need holding and you refuse to let me disappear into the darkness I've spent my life inhabiting. I love you, I whispered, and felt him go completely still. I hate that I love you. I hate that you manipulated me and lied to me and orchestrated everything. But I love you anyway. And that terrifies me more than anything you've ever done. I love you too, he said, voice raw. More than I thought I was capable of. More than is probably healthy or safe. You're the best thing I've ever done and the worst choice I've ever made, and I wouldn't change a single moment. We sat there as the sun set over Chicago, holding each other like we were the only solid things in a world gone liquid. And I accepted that I was in love with a monster who'd been changed by trying to destroy me. That my judgment was either catastrophically flawed or beautifully unconventional. That some love stories don't start with meet-cutes and butterflies. They start with surveillance and manipulation and a man deciding a woman belongs to him before she ever has a choice. And sometimes, impossibly, the woman chooses him back.
If you've made it this far, you understand.
Subscribe for more stories that live in the dark, because we're not done yet. 3 weeks later, I was starting to believe we might actually make this work.
Alexei kept his promises. No more surprise intervention.
No more orchestrated obstacles disappearing. He asked before acting, included me in decisions, treated me like an equal partner instead of a project to be managed.
We still fought.
God, we fought constantly. About his business dealings that skirted legality. About my self-sacrificing tendencies. About what constituted appropriate boundaries and what constituted control. But we also laughed, talked for hours, built something that felt less like obsession and more like partnership.
I was happy.
Or as close to happy as someone can be while dating a man with blood on his hands and secrets in every corner. Then Marcus Harrington resurfaced.
The text came on a Wednesday afternoon.
Unknown number, message simple. We need to talk. About Alexei Sokolov. About what he did to you. I should have deleted it.
Should have shown it to Alexei immediately.
But some stubborn part of me, the part that had testified against Anton Kuznetsov despite threats, the part that couldn't walk past suffering without intervening, that part needed to know what Marcus knew.
So I agreed to meet him.
Navy Pier mid-afternoon, public and safe. I told myself I was being smart. That meeting in daylight with crowds around meant nothing bad could happen. I told myself I wasn't betraying Alexei by listening to what his enemy had to say. I was wrong on both counts.
Marcus looked terrible.
The Polish was gone, replaced by a man who'd lost everything and was desperate to take someone down with him. His suit was wrinkled.
His face was gaunt.
His eyes held the manic energy of someone with nothing left to lose. "Dr. Cole," he said when I approached. "Thank you for meeting me. I'm here. Talk. Alexei Sokolov destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life by abusing your wife. Did I?" He laughed, bitter and sharp. "Or did Sokolov plant her in my life, knowing I had a temper, knowing I'd eventually hurt her, so he'd have an excuse to come after me?" My blood went cold.
What are you talking about?
Elise and I were happy once, early in our marriage. Then she started pushing my buttons, deliberately, like she was trying to make me angry, like she wanted me to hurt her. That's insane. No one wants to be abused. No?
Marcus leaned forward.
What if someone was paying her to provoke me? What if the entire thing was a setup to give Sokolov an excuse to destroy me because I'd bought a property he wanted? What if you were part of the plan too? I wasn't. He knew you'd document the injuries. He knew you'd refuse to back down. He knew I'd come after you, and he knew he'd intervene. Marcus's eyes were wild now. He used both of you, Elise to bait me, you to justify destroying me, and now he has what he wanted. The River North properties I owned, the development contracts I'd secured, and you, completely under his control. That's not true. But my voice sounded uncertain even to my own ears. Isn't it? Has he ever told you about his business? About what he actually does? He's a real estate developer. He's a criminal. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed me a series of photographs.
Buildings I recognized. Alexei's building. Money laundering fronts. Every single one. He doesn't develop real estate. He uses real estate to clean dirty money for the Russian mob. And
Dr. Cole are his perfect cover. A respectable doctor, a woman who testifies against abusers, dating the legitimate businessman, who'd suspect him of anything. I stared at the photos, mind racing. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to help me destroy him.
Marcus's voice dropped.
Testify that he forced you to cooperate, that he manipulated you. Give me ammunition to take him down, and I'll make sure you walk away clean. And if I refuse, then I'll destroy you instead. He stood. I've already filed a complaint with the medical board. Inappropriate relationship with a patient's protector. Conflict of interest. Accepting gifts and benefits from someone involved in an active abuse case, even if they can't prove anything. The investigation will ruin your reputation. My hands clenched into fists. You're threatening me. I'm giving you a choice. Help me destroy Sokolov or watch your career burn. He walked away, leaving me standing on Navy Pier with my world tilting. I sat on a bench, staring at the lake, trying to process what I'd just heard.
Was any of it true? Had Alexei planted Elise? Used me?
Was our entire relationship just another manipulation in a larger game I didn't understand? My phone rang. Alexei. I stared at his name on the screen, trying to decide whether to answer. Trying to decide whether the man I loved was a criminal using me as cover or a complicated person trying to build something real from a foundation of lies.
I answered. Where are you?
His voice was tense.
Navy Pier. Silence.
Then, very quietly, why? I needed air. You met Marcus Harrington.
Not a question. A statement.
Because of course he knew. Because he always knew. How? I have your location tracked. I saw you were at Navy Pier. Marcus was released from
From federal custody 2 hours ago on a technicality.
the familiar anger sparked. You're tracking me. For your safety. That's not, we agreed, no more controlling behavior. Keeping you safe isn't controlling you. Yes, it is.
I stood, pacing.
You don't get to monitor my location without asking. You don't get to... Did he threaten you? Alexi's voice had gone very cold. Did he touch you? He offered me a deal. Testify against you, help him destroy you, or he destroys my career. And what did you say? I told him no, obviously, but Alexi, he said things. About Elise, about how you planted her. Used both of us, about your buildings being money laundering fronts. Some of that is true, Alexi said quietly. Which parts? I'll tell you everything, but not over the phone. Where are you exactly?
I told him.
Stay there, stay in public, I'm 10 minutes away. He hung up. I sat back down, trying to control my breathing. Trying to figure out how I'd gotten here, sitting on a bench by Lake Michigan, waiting for my boyfriend to explain which parts of his criminal empire were real and which were exaggeration. Trying to understand how a woman who dedicated her life to healing had ended up tangled with a man who built his empire on violence. Loving a monster doesn't make you one.
But choosing to stay?
That's where the real story begins. Alexi arrived exactly 10 minutes later, moving through the crowd with the fluid grace of someone used to being watched. He sat beside me on the bench, close but not touching, and for a long moment we both just stared at the water. The buildings aren't money laundering fronts, he said finally. They're legitimate real estate, but some of my tenants are less than legitimate, and I've been known to look the other way when their businesses don't stand up to scrutiny. That's the extent of my current criminal activity. Current? I inherited my father's organization. I've spent the last 10 years dismantling it, getting out of the genuinely illegal operations, transitioning to legitimate business. But that transition isn't complete, and it may never be. There are connections I can't sever, debts I can't walk away from, expectations I can't ignore. He turned to look at me. I'm not a good man, Marin. I've told you that from the beginning. Did you plant Elise? No. His answer was immediate and certain.
I found her independently.
She was looking for a way out, and I offered her one in exchange for going to you specifically. That part was calculated. But her abuse was real. Her fear was real.
And my protection was real. I didn't create her situation.
That's still manipulation. Yes, Marcus is going to destroy my career. No, he's not. You can't know that. Yes, I can. Alexi's voice went very quiet. Because Marcus Harrington won't be filing any complaints. He won't be threatening you. He won't be existing in Chicago much longer. I turned to stare at him. What does that mean? It means I'm going to remove the threat. Alexei, I won't kill him, he said, reading my expression. I'm not a murderer. Despite what you might think.
But I am very good at making people disappear.
At creating situations where leaving the city becomes infinitely preferable to staying. Marcus has made a mistake. He's threatened you. And I don't allow threats to exist. That's exactly the controlling behavior we agreed you'd stop. We agreed I wouldn't control you, Alexei corrected. We never agreed I'd stop protecting you from actual threats. And Marcus Harrington is a threat. I can handle him. You shouldn't have to. He finally touched me, hand cupping my face. You spend your entire life handling things.
Fighting things.
Protecting people who can't protect themselves.
Let me do this.
Let me be the one who handles the monsters so you don't have to. I wanted to argue. Wanted to insist on fighting my own battles, maintaining my independence, proving I didn't need him, but I was exhausted and scared, and the medical board complaint, even if ultimately dismissed,
would be investigated. My reputation would be questioned. Patients would hear whispers and wonder.
Everything I'd built could crumble because a vindictive man wanted revenge. Make him go away, I whispered, but don't hurt him. Don't. I won't cross lines you can't forgive. I promise. 2 days later, Marcus Harrington left Chicago.
The medical board complaint was withdrawn. His federal charges were mysteriously reinstated with additional
evidence. And he accepted a plea deal that included permanent relocation to a minimum. Security facility in Arizona.
I didn't ask what Alexei did. Didn't want to know the specifics of how he'd orchestrated Marcus's departure.
Because knowing would make me complicit in ways I wasn't ready to accept.
But 3 weeks after that,
Marcus violated his plea agreement, left Arizona without permission, and he showed up at my clinic with a gun. Rita saw him first, called security, but he was already pushing through the waiting room.
shouting my name.
I heard the commotion from the exam room, stepped into the hallway, and froze. He looked insane. Truly, completely unhinged. His eyes were wild, his hair unkempt, his clothes disheveled, and he was holding a gun. Not aimed at anyone yet, just gripping it like a talisman. "You destroyed my life," he shouted. "Both of you. You and Sokolov. You took everything." Marcus put the gun down. I kept my voice calm, clinical. "Let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." "I had everything. Everything. And now I have nothing." "Because you couldn't mind your own business. Because you had to play hero." "I was doing my job." "Your job is to treat patients. Not document evidence. Not testify. Not destroy people's lives." He was moving closer. Security was trying to clear the waiting room. Someone had probably called. The police. But none of that mattered if Marcus decided to shoot me in the next 30 seconds. "Elise is safe now," I said. "She's free." "That's what matters. She was my wife. Mine. And you took her. She was a person, not property." "Everything is property." He was screaming now. "Power is about owning things. Controlling things. And you and Sokolov took everything I owned. So now I'm going to take something from him." The gun rose. Aimed at my chest, I heard screams, heard someone shouting my name, heard the unmistakable sound of more people rushing toward us. And then I heard Alexei's voice. Cold and deadly calm. "Marcus." Marcus spun, gun swinging toward the entrance. Alexei stood in the doorway, hands raised, posture non-threatening. But his eyes, God, his eyes were the coldest thing I'd ever seen. "You want to hurt me?" Alexei said quietly. "Then hurt me." "She's not involved." "She's everything involved." "She's the reason Elise left. She's the reason you came after me." "No." Alexei took a step forward. "I came after you because you hurt someone under my protection. Because you're the kind of man who builds his power by destroying weaker people. Myran had nothing to do with it." "Liar." "You love her. Everyone knows it. Destroying her will destroy you." "Probably," Alexei agreed, "but you won't get the chance." Things happened very quickly after that. Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. Alexei moved, impossibly fast, crossing the space between them. I screamed. Rushing forward without thinking, the gun went off, and pain exploded in my shoulder. I hit the ground hard, head cracking against linoleum. Heard shouting. Heard more gunshots. Heard Alexei's voice, raw and desperate. Screaming my name. Then hands were on me, pressing against me. I realized dimly, covered in my blood, his face above mine, and I'd never seen him look like terror. "Stay with me," he was saying. "Marin, stay with me. You don't get to leave. Not like this." "Not ever." "I'm okay," I tried to say, but it came out garbled. "You're not okay. You're bleeding. There's so much blood." His hands were shaking. "Someone call an ambulance." "No." "Already called," someone said. "Rita," I thought. "They're 3 minutes out." 3 minutes is too long. His voice cracked. "She's everything." "She can't, I'm fine," I managed, clearer this time. "Shoulder wound. Non-fatal." "You don't know that." "I'm a doctor." I tried to smile. "I can't lose you." He was crying now, actual tears streaming down his face. "Do you understand?" "I can. You're the only good thing I've ever done, and if you die because of me, because I couldn't protect you, you did protect me." My good hand found his face. "You came. You're here." I should have killed him. When I had the chance, I should have. I held his gaze. "You did exactly what I asked. You didn't cross lines I couldn't forgive. And look what that got you. I'm alive." The ambulance arrived. Paramedics swarmed. I was loaded onto a stretcher, Alexei refusing to let go of my hand. And as they wheeled me out, I saw Marcus Harrington on the ground, security holding him down. The gun several feet away. He'd taken his shot, he'd failed, and he'd lost everything in the process. The hospital stay was short. The bullet had gone through muscle, missing bone and major blood vessels. I was lucky, impossibly lucky. Alexei never left my side, not during surgery, not during recovery, not during the police interviews or the hospital review or the endless parade of concerned colleagues. He sat beside my bed like a guard dog, monitoring every nurse, questioning every medication, refusing to sleep or eat until I was cleared for discharge. "You need to go home," I told him on day 2. "Get rest."
No.
"Alexei, I failed you." His voice was hollow. "I promised to protect you and you got shot."
That's failure.
"You saved my life. I should have prevented this entirely." "You can't prevent everything."
Some things just happen. Not to you.
He finally looked at me, and the devastation in his eyes nearly broke me. "You don't get hurt.
You don't get threatened. You don't get shot.
Those are the rules."
And I broke them.
"Those aren't rules."
That's not how life works.
"It's how my life works." He took my hand carefully, mindful of the fourth I've spent years building walls between myself and the world, keeping everyone at a distance, not letting anyone matter enough to hurt me. And then you walked into my life, or I walked into yours, and suddenly I had something to lose. Someone who mattered more than anything. And I couldn't protect you. You did protect me. I'm here.
I'm alive.
Marcus is in custody. You have a scar now. His thumb brushed near my shoulder, not touching the bandage but hovering close. A permanent reminder that loving me comes with consequences. All love comes with consequences, I said quietly. The question is whether the consequences are worth it. Are they?
I thought about the past 6 months. The lies and manipulation.
The violence done on my behalf. The monster I'd fallen for and the man he was trying to become. Yes, I said, they are. He kissed me then, gentle and desperate, and I kissed him back, tasting salt from tears I wasn't sure were his or mine. 6 months later, I stood in Alexei's penthouse, looking out at the Chicago skyline I'd come to know so well. The scar on my shoulder was healed, pink and raised, a reminder of the day I'd stepped between a gun and the man I loved. Marcus Harrington was in federal prison, 20 years. No possibility of parole. Elise called occasionally from Portland. She'd opened a small gallery, started dating a kind, quiet man who worked at a bookstore. She was happy, truly happy.
And sometimes she'd ask me the question, "Are you happy?"
I'd look at Alexei, at the man who'd orchestrated my world and then rebuilt it with me, at the monster who'd learned to be gentle and the protector who'd learned to ask permission. I don't know if happiness is the right word, I'd tell her honestly, but I'm his.
And he's mine. And that's enough.
Because the truth is, I fell in love with a man who decided I belonged to him before I had a choice, who surveilled me for 3 years, who manipulated circumstances to insert himself into my life, who used my courage and my compassion as weapons in a game I didn't know I was playing. And when I discovered the truth, when I held evidence of his betrayal in my hands, I chose him anyway. Not because I'm weak,
Not because I'm naive.
but because I saw beneath the manipulation to the desperation underneath. I saw a man who'd spent his life in darkness reaching toward light and not knowing how to ask for it. I saw someone who'd planned revenge and found redemption instead.
We're not a healthy love story. We're not an example anyone should follow.
We're two people who found each other in impossible circumstances and decided that the foundation being a lie didn't make the building any less real. Alexei still tracks my location. I've accepted that's who he is, how he shows love. But now I track his too, turnabout being fair play. He still orchestrates situations, removes obstacles, uses his power and connections to smooth my path. But now he asks first, includes me in decisions, treats me as a partner instead of a project.
We still fight.
Constantly. about boundaries and control and the difference between protection and possession. But we also laugh,
Talk for hours.
build something that exists in the gray space between right and wrong, between love and obsession, between healthy and destructive.
I still document bruises. Take photographs. Testify against abusers.
That's who I am, and Alexei wouldn't want me any other way. But now I understand that some monsters fight other monsters. That violence can be aimed at people who deserve it. That the world isn't black and white, but infinite shades of complicated gray. And sometimes, the person you need is the person you should run from. Sometimes the healthiest choice is admitting you'll make an unhealthy one anyway.
Sometimes love doesn't heal you.
It consumes you,
Possesses you.
drags you into darkness, and teaches you to see in shadows. My name is Dr. Marin Cole. I documented the bruises. Hours later, the Mafia boss arrived. He orchestrated my world, manipulated my life, and built our foundation on lies.
And I chose him anyway.
Because obsession isn't always destructive.
Sometimes it's the thing that saves you.
Sometimes the person watching from the shadows is the one who sees you most clearly. Sometimes the monster is the hero, and the hero learns to love the monster back. We're still together.
Still fighting. Still building something impossible. And if you asked me whether I regret it,
Whether I'd choose differently if I could go back to that Tuesday afternoon when Elise Harrington walked into my clinic, I'd tell you the truth.
every day I question this choice.
Every day I see the moral compromises, the ethical violations, the ways I've changed from who I was. But every day I choose him again. Not because it's right,
Not because it's healthy.
but because some bonds are forged in fire, and once you've been burned, you learn to live with the scars. I love a man who decided I belonged to him before I ever had a choice. And I've decided that belonging to someone isn't the same as being owned. That surrendering to love isn't weakness. That trusting a monster who chose to protect you instead of destroy you is its own kind of courage. We document different things now. Not just bruises,
But moments.
connections. The strange alchemy that happens when two people who shouldn't work together build something stronger than either of them could create alone.
This is how obsession ends. Not with revelation or rescue,
Not with walking away or choosing differently.
but with acceptance.
With saying yes to the darkness and learning to find light within it. With loving someone completely, devastatingly, impossibly, and choosing that love every single day despite knowing better.
They say love is supposed to heal you.
Make you better. Lift you toward the light.
But some love doesn't heal.
It consumes.
It possesses.
It marks you permanently and changes you fundamentally. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need. My name is Dr. Marin Cole. I fell for a man who orchestrated my entire world.
And I do it again. Every single time.